Okay, we're going to talk about small groups first. How many of you have ever led a small group before?
What's your definition of small, please?
6 to 10 people. 5 to 10 people. Okay.
I guess I feel
So you all have some experience. How many of you feel like you're really good at it? Or you're okay at it, at least?
We're comfortable.
I can keep them from fighting.
Yeah. I feel like comfortable, but I'm not like an expert small group leader because I like to talk too much. But it is, why should we do small groups? Sense of community. You know, with a large number of kids, even if you are having 20 to 25, they are not going to all know each other closely. And small groups give an opportunity for you to kind of mix some of them around and help them get to know other people that they may not have known otherwise. And it also just in general helps them to get to know people, especially if they're new. And it helps with teaching, it helps with when you have a smaller group there, you can have some feedback, more comfortable with sharing with a smaller group of people. And also accountability. Accountability, this is when you get more deeper into like the older kids with some of these discipleship groups that I was talking about, which some of you may want to do in the future once we get that program rolling. But that's holding them accountable. Like, you know, how's your prayer life? You know, you said you were going to pray a decade of the rosary every day, you know, last week. So are you doing it? You won't get that intense with your youth night small groups, but there is some sense if you challenge them at the end and they come back the next week and say, hey, you know, did you do it? The how-to. Begin in with prayer in most cases. Say in most cases, sometimes the environment may not lend itself to beginning with prayer, but at least always end with prayer to get it started off. You can do written prayer, extemporaneous prayer, some combination. It's always kind of nice for the group to say a prayer if you end with a Hail Mary and Our Father, Glory Be. Ask the intercessions of the saints. And after a time, when you sense they might be comfortable, you can ask them to pray. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. That's okay if there's some awkward silence. Try to create an open environment. Just have them face each other. Have them affirm confidentiality that, you know, nothing, especially if it's a more serious topic, that you won't take anything and share with somebody outside the group unless it's something that they could harm themselves with or harm others. And they should not take anything out of that either. So it's not just you, but
Stays in the room.
right. It's
Yeah, but they can tell their parents the subject discussed and what they said, but not what other people said, right?
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
but you want to make sure that they know that you're open for them sharing what they said with their parents, right? If their parents say, what'd you do tonight?
Right.
But not what somebody else said,
Right.
right? Because there's a difference.
I think that's a good rule.
So
Because some parents
you do
are-
take something with you, but not
Yeah.
other people's stuff.
Absolutely, because I mean, parents they don't need to know what, you know, somebody
Yeah.
else's child said.
Yeah.
In a small group.
But if my kid came home and said, oh, well, my group leader told me I'm not supposed to tell you what we talked about,
It'd be kind of
I'd be
fishy.
mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be nervous.
Yeah, and I don't think they need to be talking about what other kids said with their parents because, quite frankly, some parents are gossips. And they can be just as bad as the kids sometimes.
Worse.
Worse on Facebook, and there's a whole other element. So just if they don't like that, I mean, there's not much we can do about it. The first meeting, it's always kind of scary. Have them introduce themselves. It's always nice if you can have some kind of icebreaker introduction. And you can look some up on the internet. Their Lifeteen might provide some of those. Invite everyone to participate, and do make it explicit that gossip will be avoid it. Make the guidelines, and you may have to remind them from time to time about that. And when you ask questions, you may have to ask the first question. I'm sorry, you may have to answer the first question. But don't be afraid to, depending on the topic, to allow silence. We're not comfortable with silence. But silence, the wheels can often be turning when there is silence. And there's different personalities. Some people, you know, if you're an extrovert, you're going to expect, oh, well, if they're not, you know, talking and sharing, then nothing's going on. And they had a bad experience. No, that's just not their personality. Not everybody needs to be talking a whole lot. But on the other hand, don't let that one real outgoing person dominate the discussion. Try and keep the conversation on track. Oh, this is so hard. Choose a location where there are not distractions. Pay attention to body language. And try to be, your job isn't to do teaching in the small group, or even to necessarily get advice, give advice. Your job is to keep ask questions that will lead to good discussion. And if you are tempted to give advice, I'm not saying you never should, but you can kind of, you want to lead somebody into doing it for them. These are not counseling sessions. And we don't want to focus on any one person's problem and have that dominate the whole group. When the topic strays, listen, but look for an opportunity to get in and bring them back to the topic. A good example is, that was a good point, now I'd like to ask someone else how they would respond to the situation we discussed earlier. So when you need to cut off somebody, always say thanks, or that was real good, and then move on. So it kind of softens the blow a little bit. Affirm the teens, both inside and out of the group. Outside the group, say, that's a great question, or that's a great point. Try and do a lot of that. And even outside of your group, hey man, you had a great point to make in small group tonight. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of open up for a few minutes on any tips that you all have in your experience from leading small groups that may not have been.
Josh, the small groups you're talking about here are the break and the left hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are planning on having the juniors and seniors after confirmation, when they're kind of serving the younger kids, whether it be in the same gender groups that are on Wednesday night, or the mixed groups, the Lifeteen, the Edge, and those programs on Sunday mornings. Them being a part of a small group of 6 to 10 juniors and seniors, either girls or guys, that have the same group for 2 years with the same adult leader, and that's a more intense. But they're not, all their meetings won't be small group discussion. Some of them will be recreation service. But this is a little bit lighter.
Do we own any flip charts?
I'm sure we do.
I
couldn't tell you where they are.
I was going to say, I find that once in a while that some groups need to see the question written out, or abbreviated, written out, rather than just hearing it. Some people deal well hearing, but some want to see it written out.
And sometimes we have handouts too.
Yeah, that's true, handouts.
You can plan to make copies of handouts.
We're allowed to do that. Oh, okay.
Any other tips or questions on small groups?
I was going to say, it's, I think before I used to be really good with names, but as I'm getting older, I'm like, I don't even know. But I think it's such an effort to really get to know everyone's name, and it's good that we'll have smaller size groups, so it's easy. But making that effort if you're not good, I know kids are surprised when you call them out by name. They're like, what? Oh, shoot. Anyway, so.
Are we allowed to ask them to wear name tags the first few times so we get to know the names?
We'll probably do that, but I hope that we won't have to do that eventually. But just, it really, if you put an effort into it, you can do it. It's just being conscious of making that effort.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, this is why it helps to have your support people doing a lot of the logistical stuff. So you're not, because you know, when somebody's talking to me and I'm thinking, how am I gonna get that DVD to work or something? I'm not listening to what they're telling me, including what their name is. Or I'm already moving on to the next part, and I forget that if you just, when they tell you their name, if you repeat it like 3 times in your head, studies have shown that you remember. Now for me, I remember people's names easier if I have both their first and last name. I don't know why. Maybe it's connecting them with the family or something, but if I have their first and last name, I remember them a whole lot easier than if I just know their first name. So
Really?
when you see me talking, I always ask, and what's your last name? And that also gives me a pause to repeat their name in my head a few times while I'm listening for their last name.
That's good.
So, and that way, also, if I forget their name, then I can at least be like, oh yeah, you're one of the Cummings, you know, or something. So they at least know that I remember that much. You know, like 50, I'm 1 for 2, you know. At least I remembered your last name. Might have got you mixed up with your sibling, but.
Then you can go look them up in the church directory and find a picture and figure out who they are.
Honestly, yeah, I've got all the people that are registered, families that are registered, kids that are registered. I've got their families on my address book in my iPhone.
Wow.
And part of that's because if we're out on a trip or a conference or a retreat and something happens, I have it right there, ready to go. Cell phone numbers and everything. The other part is that, you know, when if their parents call, I can see that it's them calling. And so, but yes, there have been times when I've looked up in there to see, I remember their last name was this, and I remember. So. It's called cheating. Or if you have an iPhone, you can look them up on Facebook. Be like, if you know their last name, you can kind of type in their last
That's
name.
just smart.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, you know, if they come in the group and they immediately start talking, you know, I just flunked my history test, or maybe their grandmother just died, you know, there's something that they really, that if you have the group just say a really quick prayer, then they're able to move on, and otherwise you just want to keep talking about it the whole discussion time, right? So, well, it's also nicer to pray for them, but
Right. But
know.
that way you bring like a natural closure to it.
yeah,
I mean, you might ask a few questions, but you don't want to dwell on that the whole time.
yeah,
Like I said, it's not a counseling. It robs the other kids of that time when we were focusing. Now, there may be situations that call for, you know, but what can happen is the same person brings the same, is the drama of the whole group, and it gets old after a while. Yeah, we're not doing Oprah pop psychology. Any other tips, questions about small groups?
I usually try to make sure everyone gets involved.
There you go.
Not let someone monopolize the time.
I agree.
I think that's what you were talking. You guys were even saying. But maybe I'm just reinforcing that.
I think it needs to be said again.
I think on the other hand of that though, like you, like don't let others take control and make sure everyone's participating, but you need to participate yourself, because I've been in groups before where the person who's facilitating or leading, they like keep themselves distant, and so I just didn't trust them and I wouldn't talk when they were in the group, and if they left the room for something really fast, I would be talking fine, but I didn't have any trust in them, so make sure you're actually
They need to get to know you.
participating yourself. Yeah, they need to know something about you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think sharing something from your life that's appropriate, you know, that something has shown that you're thinking about this too. You definitely, my tendency is to talk too much, so that's why I keep myself. Not supposed to be teaching so much as helping them think this through.
When it comes to like, so, because I usually would say like, maybe we should just keep what we're saying like then what we're talking like keep it here,
Right.
like private. But what was it that someone else said?
The child, you say the only thing you can take out of this group is what you said, and you can tell your parents what you said, but you can't tell your parents what somebody else said.